Hello and welcome to the Find Your Flow radio show podcast. I'm your host, Winston, and I'm here today with a very special episode. Today's episode is with a very, very special guest. This man is somebody I totally admire and appreciate and look up to. He has been a friend and a mentor. You may even say a friend-tor for many years. And he has been someone who I learned from and met in sunny San Diego. He's an entrepreneur, a geek marketer, a sales expert, a teacher, a husband, and father to two wonderful girls who I had the pleasure of knowing as a music teacher to them back in the day. Henry Evans has been involved in getting results with sales and marketing for over 20 years and is the author of the best-selling book, The Hour a Day Entrepreneur, where he talks about how to get more done in 1 hour than most people get done in 1 day. And this is true. I've seen him do it. I've learned. I've got the book. And Henry has been successful on the front lines and in leadership capacities in software companies, hardware companies, commercial real estate firms, and manufacturing organizations. He's successfully sold everything from newspapers to office buildings, kitchen remodeling to software, and has been responsible for generating tens of millions in sales and has engineered a $189,000 payday in just 90 minutes. He is a lifelong learner, a believer in continual self-improvement, and lives in appreciation for all of his blessings. Henry resides in San Diego with his wife, 2 daughters, an 11-pound guard dog, Skylar. Skylar has gotten bigger. So help me welcome everybody, Mr. Henry Evans.
Hey, good to see you, Winston. Thanks for having me, buddy. And by the way, I'm not sure if you'll end up showing the video, but there is Skylar, the 10-pound guard dog. Skylar.
Nice.
There
oh my
is.
Gosh, so cute.
Don't
so
be
cute.
intimidated. I know he can be very frightening. I'm sorry to scare people.
Yeah, very frightening. I remember when you guys got Skylar and just a tiny pup, so big, even bigger and more ferocious now, I can see.
Yes, very, very ferocious for sure. But no, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and this will be fun. I love talking about getting into the right frame and state of mind. It's really important to be productive and get things done. So.
And you would know, yeah, Henry, for, people who've been listening to the show, who have known that I've been a lifelong entrepreneur and lifelong learner myself. I've always looked for people, mentors, people who are sharp and, really good at entrepreneurship and time saving and effectiveness. And Henry used to manage or own or have run a successful marketing chapter in San Diego where entrepreneurs from all over would flock to this very powerful marketing seminar, really, of sorts, and networking opportunity. And Henry facilitated it. So it was amazing. It's fun. I met so many successful, amazing people there as a result. And got to be a part of one of Henry's masterminds, which was really an amazing experience. And so Henry, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I know that you have some flow experiences of your own that you are willing to share with us. So if you would please kind of elaborate on some of these flows that you've had.
Sure. So, well, I wanted to start off with a story on where I first saw somebody else get into the flow from a business standpoint. So I was in a mastermind group with a gentleman named Matt Fury, who, if you do things online, you might have seen him. He sells things like how to get in shape and how to do like the Chinese long life system. He's got all these like really unique products, but usually around getting in shape. He's married to somebody who is from China. And so he has a real kind of Chinese connection and brings things over and sells them in the US. Really neat guy, very, very smart marketer. And he's actually how I first learned about Dan Kennedy, who ended up being one of my marketing mentors, and a whole bunch of other people. Matt was the first person because I was looking for how to get in shape online. Actually, how to do home karate is what I was actually searching, and found his ad and his sales letter and got sucked in and ended up buying and spent way too much money with him. But it was a good education, learned a lot. And so I was in his mastermind, which was held in Tampa, Florida. And he's arguably the best email copywriter in the world, in my opinion. He used to do emails very often. Now it's not quite as often, but maybe once a week or so. One of his sites is called Psycho-Cybernetics, from the book written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz.
Oh, yeah.
Great book. He actually bought the rights to that, and he now runs the Psycho-Cybernetics. I think it's foundation and website and all of that. He actually owns all that now. So, but his email copywriting is just phenomenal. And so I was at a mastermind. My masterminds are like, 7, 8, maybe up to 10 people, but usually like 7 or 8 or 9. His mastermind had 120 people in it. So it's not really a mastermind. It was a big group of people, that all were learning from him. And he said he was going to write an email for us all in front of the group. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so most of the time when you write an email, you sit down, you start up a new email thread or open up a Word doc or a text file, whatever. But it's something blank and you just sit there and you type and try to figure out what you're going to say. He did it, and he almost did like a meditative state. So he kind of stopped and, did some deep breathing exercises, thought about what his goal was for how he was going to send this email, what it was. And then I don't know where he was channeling it from, but he just started channeling, just like bang the whole thing out as like a stream of consciousness. And it was just amazing. I mean, it flowed really well. You could see he like weaved in the story. And I'm like, man, where's this coming from? It was awe-inspiring to watch somebody. And I think if you meet really good writers, perhaps they get into this state. So that was where I first got exposed to it. It was watching Matt Fury do an email, and the deep breathing seemed to be a key part of it. And the relaxation seemed to be a key part of it. He also was doing it, he was in front of a big group too. So I'm sure he was a little keyed up from that. So I took that, and even to this day, I do. And so when I wrote my book also, but even when I write emails, oftentimes I will transcribe them. So my book that I wrote called The Hour Day Entrepreneur. So it's a true story of how I went from, working at a job to going out on my own. I ended up working all day, spending time with my wife and my 2 young daughters, and then working 1 hour a day from like 9 to 10 or 10 to 11 every night. And I was able to get so much done because I didn't have any other time to work. That was it. I only had an hour. And one of my friends I was in a mastermind with, he's like, dude, you're like the hour a day guy. I'm like, what? He's like, you're like an hour a day entrepreneur. And it just kind of stuck. So that's where I didn't even come up with the name of the book. And then I became an entrepreneur and realized, oh, it's actually the 12-hour a day entrepreneur. Who would have known? You end up working way more. But it was a ton of fun. And, but I wrote that book, and I say wrote in quotes. I ended up really talking a lot of that book out, Winston. It worked really well. And, so I was able to get into the flow, and, a lot of the book, I actually went on a business trip to Charleston, South Carolina. And I brought I had an earlier version of a Yeti microphone like this, and I packed it with me with my laptop, and I recorded a lot of the book when I wasn't at this event in my room, just because you're in a different state of mind. So to boil all that down to how I get into flow today, especially when I'm writing, it's I'll do it in some place other than my desk. I can do it when I'm at my desk, but if I'm outside in nature, if I'm walking the dog, if I'm at the beach, I'm live in San Diego, so I go to the beach. I'll go to different lakes, like Lake Miramar is not too far away from me. I'll go for a walk over there. Being around water tends to help me get into a flow state. Being around nature helps me get into a flow state. And so oftentimes I'll be on a walk with my dog, and I'll be using the voice recorder option on my phone. So that helps me a lot. And then there's a great app that I use, is called Rev, REV. It used to be a red icon. Now it is a blue icon. But Rev is, it's an audio recording system for your phone. Looks like this, where it records and it actually puts the little audio on there. And the nice thing about it is you can record everything, and you can pause as you're going and just get stream of consciousness out and get in a flow state when you're walking, when you're in the car, when you're working out, wherever you are. And then it's got one click button you can send and get it transcribed. So if you're somebody that thinks and is able to think and speak well, for me, a big, hack if you will, of getting into a flow state is go with whatever's natural. For me, starting with a blank Word document, I'm actually hiring somebody. I'm actually hiring a couple people right now for the software company that I'm working with. And, it's starting with a blank document on a job description is very hard. I go grab one of the old ones that I've done, put it up, and then start editing. Way faster and easier to get into a flow state. So that's another thing that I do. But I really like speaking instead of typing when it comes to getting into flow for me. And one other just little quick thing, and then I'll kind of let you direct where we want to go here is, so if you have an Apple computer, if you don't, if you have a PC, that's okay too, but you have to get a program for it. But if you have an iPad or an iPhone or an Apple computer, they have really good dictation, and Android does too, really good dictation built in. And so I got one of these new MacBook Pros that just came out here when we're recording in 2021. And it's actually got a microphone button on the keyboard. The F5 button is the transcribe button. So I hit that button and I just talk to the computer, hit it again, and it's all transcribed, which is really freaking nice. So there's a few tips and techniques on things that I've done on getting into flow there.
That is awesome, Henry. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that was a good little flow right there, and stream of consciousness sharing some goodness there. So thank you for that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
A couple cool things that caught my attention that you said were, there's a bunch, but one of the first ones was when your first experience that you said when you saw Matt I won't say Fear, but I keep saying Fury. So we were talking about Joe Fear earlier. Matt Fury. Psycho-Cybernetics, definitely love that book. That was a big one for me. But then the meditative state that he got in before writing. And I find too that for a lot of flow states, and then being able to do it effectively, right? Because having the knowledge at some level that he was able to tap into to allow that stream of consciousness to come through. And something I know you used to talk about a lot at the marketing summits was the handwriting copy, transcribing by hand copy that was already successful, Dan Kennedy copy a lot of times. And that way you get it into your muscle memory, you get it into your fingers, you get into your hands. And when you said the staring at a blank page versus a previous piece of work that you'd already done, that you could go through and then just edit it, that I talk a lot about templates and being able to use things that are already done and reuse things to kind of make it a cookie cutter. So you don't have to think too much consciously about it in the moment. You can just flow right through it and just kind of rinse and repeat. And it sounds like that's it's at some level what you're talking about or describing here.
Yeah, 100%. That's such a great point out there too. So when you write with your hand in, on pen to paper, I actually keep a little to-do list, checklist every day that I go through and write, with my hand. And especially if you write in cursive, it just goes into a different part of the brain. And they've done studies on this, and so it's different and it connects with you on a different level. Yes, and trust me, I've got an iPad here and I've got the Apple Pencil, and you can do that too, and that works. But there's something about putting ink or, lead or whatever, graphite, whatever it is, onto paper that hits your brain in a different way. And I'll still never forget, I had a client of mine, and you're right. I mean, I would teach this quite a bit, and she was a designer and she wanted to be a world famous designer. And I told her, I said, look, I've told so many people to do this. So I'll share this really cool technique for people who are listening. Very, very few people have done it. And I've shared this with thousands of people. So I'll share it, and maybe there'll be one or two people that will actually try this because it is profound. I recommended to her, I said, get a notebook and write exactly what you want over and over and over in your non-dominant hand in cursive. And I don't remember where I learned this technique from, and it's kind of a funky one. But she actually did it, and she would write, I'm a world famous designer. And she actually sent me, I have it in I was trying to find it to see if I have it. I could actually share it. But I can't find it here. I don't know what I called that the name of the image she sent me. But she wrote that, for, page after page after page. And she literally brainwashed herself in a very good and unique and positive way to think of herself in this way. And, she literally was pulled towards her goals of being a world-class designer, which is super cool. So that's a neat way to get into flow, this idea of, writing, putting pen to paper. And that's kind of a, very unique thing. Oh, now I remember where I first heard about it. I ran a company called Self-Hypnosis.com, and my business partner, he was the doctor. He'd actually studied under Milton Erickson. He was the talent, if you will, and I was the business and marketing and sales guy. And that was something that he used to say, is write with your non-dominant hand, because you'll just pick up more things when you do that. So that was something that I've taught people through the years, but she's one of a handful of people that actually took it to an extreme and actually got the journal and would literally write. I don't know if you've ever tried to write in your non-dominant hand. For me, I'm right-handed, so writing left-handed. My wife's left-handed, and I watch her. I don't know how she does it, and she looks at me writing right-handed. I don't know how you do that. But that would be a neat thing for people to consider. And again, it's kind of a shortcut to getting into a flow state, and get into a state where things become easy and become on autopilot. I'm actually reading a book right now called Atomic Habits. Have you ever read that one before?
I have not read that one.
Yeah, it's by I'm trying to remember who the author is. I think it's James Clear, and really neat book. And again, it's I'm good friends with the gentleman. He came and spoke to the meeting. I think you might remember Winston when we were doing those. He wrote a book called The Habit Factor. So I'm a huge fan of habits. And at the end of the day, we ultimately become what our habits are. So what habits can get you into a flow state? For me, we have one of these Peloton bikes. Mm-hmm. It's an exercise bike for home, which by the way, amazing, absolutely nice. Amazing machine. My wife wanted it for Christmas, like a year and a half. Geez, I guess we've had it a little bit. Have been 2 years now. We got it pretty early on. Yeah. Cause I think we got it before, I think we got it in January of 2019. I don't know. And anyway, it was before COVID, when you can actually get them, when they had enough stock. And I told her, this thing is an overpriced, toy, and it's just a freaking bike. I'll go buy a bike. I already have a bike. I'll just put a thing on it where it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And boy, was I wrong. It is just amazing. And to get in the flow on that, all you have to do is just convince yourself to sit on the seat and start a class with somebody who's one of your favorite instructors. They're all on demand. You can also do them live, but on demand's easier. And once you get going, you will just get into a flow state. They literally will pull you into a flow state because they hire just amazing instructors. So that's kind of a unique way to, how do you find these habits or these tips, techniques, tricks, routines that get you into a flow state? And for exercise, I found that that's one. And I actually did it last night. We were watching Knight Rider, which is something I grew up with as a kid. I don't know if you watched that too, Winston, when back in the 80s. And so my girls were like, oh, this Knight Rider, and like, oh, girls, we got to watch this. So we started watching Knight Rider, and it was like 9 o'clock. So I'm like, I want to go to bed, but I'll just go get on the bike for 5 minutes. 5 minutes turned into a 30-minute workout. So I got into a flow state because I know the little trick for me is just go get on it. Mm-hmm. Just go get on. So
nice. That's great stuff. And again, you said a lot of really fascinating things that I find very exciting. I don't know if I've ever heard the non-dominant hand one. That's a neat one. I can see how that could definitely help someone get into flow states. I see how that could be a focused activity that puts you in that mindset of whatever that affirmation or is that you're writing. And I remember back in the day you talking about selfhypnosis.com. I've been a huge fan of self-hypnosis. That was something that certainly impacted my life greatly when I started practicing it when I was young, and that you had built that. And I remember you shared with us one time a phrase that that changed it all for you. If I could pick your brain on that, because I don't quite remember what it was, and maybe you don't remember, maybe you do remember what it was, but there was like one word or phrase, I think, that really helped you take that to the next level when you were marketing that product.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. Yes, I do remember. It was specifically on getting people to opt in on that website. So we tried all these different messages to try to get people into our marketing funnel. So I'm a big, student of copywriting and marketing and sales, and have a lot of experience and background, and been fortunate to be able to play in that space a lot. And I think it is fun. Like, how do you motivate people to take action? And specifically on that, we tried all these different things to get people to opt in and try different things. Oh, sorry. Hang on one second here. I'm going to let out the guard dog.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Skylar's got to go destroy somebody, protect the house.
He's being ferocious. I'm taking it that my 1 o'clock person is here early, but that's okay. They can wait. And so we tried all these different ideas on how to get people to opt in. And what we found, and we did a bunch of split testing, and which is, opinions are great, but at the end of the day, a lot of marketing is just test and see what works better. There's all sorts of great, tools out there that will let you test online. And what ended up working for us was try hypnosis now. When we put that on there and people could try it out for free, and do just a simple, and now, of course, this has grown a ton. You have whole companies, multi-million-dollar companies like Calm, and I'm trying to think of all the other ones right now. I mean, I have like different ones that are like specific for prayer, called Hallow. There's all sorts of different apps that are all about relaxation. And I actually saw a basketball player who was actually promoting one of them. So this stuff has grown a lot, especially if apps have become more prevalent. We were actually selling CDs to people when I first started that, and MP3 downloads were more rare. We actually sold more CDs. But yeah, that was what ended up working in that case. Was it's like, just try it now, try hypnosis now, and letting people get into a flow state through hypnosis is really neat. And hypnosis is it's just a different state of brainwaves. And now there's a great app that I have on my phone. I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called, because it's got a funky name, but it's an app specifically for getting you into a better state. It's called Brainwave 35 Binaural Programs. And it's an app that specifically plays binaural beats, which basically are kind of artificially created sounds that are different in each ear to put your brain into different states. And it's a pretty amazing app. So you can get into a relaxed state. And so I actually have my wife, I had her download that. So if she ever wakes up in the middle of the night and then, can't go back to sleep, you just put this thing on and boom, it'll knock you right out in a very good way for dreamy sleep. So
it's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And you were talking about habits and routines and tricks and Peloton, and another really exciting thing you said was instructors, and how they've got really good instructors. You were planning to go on the bike for just 5 minutes. You ended up spending a half hour there. And that is a very common experience for flow states for a lot of us, right? Is that once we get into it, it's like, man, this is so enjoyable. Why would I ever stop? Or we even just lose track of time altogether, and 30 minutes flies by and it felt like 5 minutes. So I love that you pointed out these instructors, and that some people are able to help you get into these flow states on a consistent basis. You have a routine, you have habits that allow you to continuously and repeatedly get into flow states. So, and even apps that you use to help you get into flow states. So that's all very, very exciting things. If you had to name one thing, so another type of flow state, one thing that fascinates me is there's a lot of attention that's given to flow states that are doing things, going biking, riding Peloton, bike, surfing, skating, dancing, these kind of things. And I love those. I'm a huge fan of them. I've built my lifestyle around these kind of things. Another flow state that I've kind of discovered, or that I like to talk about and get into, it's a little less spoken about, a little less recognized, I think, but I think it's also very important, is one that is around kind of coincidences, or around connection, and around being able to have kind of shared experiences, maybe, where it's like, oh man, I was just thinking about Henry the other day, and then boom, I got an email from him, right? And these kind of things that almost seem like, if I hadn't been paying attention, it wouldn't have happened, but because I expected it, or I was paying attention, it just flowed into it, and here we are. And it's like, oh, Henry sent me an email, oh my gosh, and I asked him to be on my podcast, and now here we are, and we're talking about flow state. So do you have any experiences like that, where you feel like maybe it's serendipity, or it's been your calling, or bigger kind of amazing flow states that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, sure. I will try not to dive too deep into this, because I'm somebody who has a very strong faith, and from my standpoint, I look at that as kind of God, or the Holy Spirit, if you will, guiding and steering my life. And yeah, I mean, I see it all the time, all sorts of stuff like that, where I'll be, so one example, I thought, so I've seen all these different prayer apps coming out, and I had this really good brainstorm for a prayer app, kind of an AI powered machine learning prayer app, which basically, and again, it's like, you'll see a lot of people selling these kind of things, and whether it's self-hypnosis, which, is very similar to prayer, basically. Prayer is as if you believe in a higher power that you're praying to, versus, praying to, the universe or something like that. But I was thinking, like, boy, it'd be really cool to do an app like this. And I'd love that. And so my marketing brain is like, okay, if I'm going to do something like that, how do I make it really unique? And how do I make it better than all the other things out there? Because that makes marketing easier. You want to have something to talk about. Otherwise, marketing just speeds up how fast people find out how bad you are. So I mean, you want to have a good product, a good service. And it was funny. So literally, I met this guy in a church group he's got 10 patents to his name, and he's like an AI machine learning expert.
Wow. Nice.
And super smart. He's from Poland, and he's got a business where he actually works with people in Poland. He lives here in San Diego, but he works with people in Poland, and he's like leverages all these people that are based over there, but he's based over here. Mm-hmm. And he's absolutely brilliant at what he does. And so we've gotten together a few times, and we're kind of talking about how we're, supposed to be able to work together. But it was very funny how, God kind of plopped this person right in front of me, which is ironic, because what are the odds of meeting somebody like that? It's just, I mean, I could share so many stories of how things, and again, if you don't have a faith piece, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think everybody's searching for answers for themselves. For me, it just happens to be Christianity, but I have plenty of friends who are, Jewish or have other beliefs. It's like, but at the end of the day, one thing we can all agree with is that death and taxes are 100% certain. And I'm a very strong believer that there is something beyond, this earthly plane that we exist on for a very small amount of time. And, so how do you make as big of an impact and help as many people as you can while you're here? Obviously you have a family like I do. How do you be there and be strong and loving and supportive for those people that you love, the family and friends you're surrounded with? So I'm a big believer that there's stuff like that, I've seen flow states like pop up and get introduced to different people. And I'm like, there's no way there's not somebody driving this thing on the other side. It's too, the odds of it are just too slim, that it would just be, yeah. So yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. I appreciate that. And that's that's something that I feel that when we are open to that and aware of it, that we can kind of have it happen more often, right? And like you said, you've got faith in you've got a Christian faith, and I know obviously a lot of folks that do, and people maybe have different faiths, but I tend to see that similarity for people that, and for I've known atheists too, so not to count them out, but yeah, to be able to see something bigger, and that there is some kind of intelligent life force, God, however you want to kind of relate to it, to be able to connect and be maybe aware of and thankful for, and have experienced more of it. So I appreciate you sharing that, Henry. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And then, one thing too, that I'll add there also, Winston, which is this idea, because we did talk about flow state a lot, as far as like, I wrote a book on productivity. I'm all about like getting more things done, but there is like a flow state of just being present. And a lot of self-hypnosis is just focusing on your breathing and being present, getting out in nature, and just, and I hate to say it, because I'm a huge fan and I love technology, but you got to turn off the damn phone and the iPad and the Game Boy and the computer and the laptop. And, we've got a Tesla. That's a screen right there, even if you don't even bring your phone with you, although you need your phone as a key. But, there's screens everywhere, and there's noise everywhere. I look at my office, I've got a Sonos speaker over there and a Sonos speaker over there, where I can play, music in the background. It's like, but just being at peace and silent. And I actually have this thing, which I'm happy to send to you, and anybody that requests it, they can ping me, and I'd be happy to send it. And I call it my Henry's patented beach day. And it's not long. It's just 10 steps on something to get back in touch with yourself, with the higher power. And it's get out in nature. And I do it at the beach. You can do it anywhere where you're just away from people, technologies, and cement. And you go by yourself. You bring a notebook, no electronics, nothing digital. You bring water and a snack. You sit down and you basically like let all the thoughts out of your head. It's called squeezing the sponge. And it might take you an hour, it might take you 4 hours. You just get everything out of your head, and then you ask yourself for advice, and write as if you were your own consultant. You're as if you were your own consultant, and you don't think, you just write uncensored. So I would tell myself to make sure to work out every morning and don't wait till the end of the day at 9 p.m. It's like, just let it out. And then I do talk about in this, and again, it's just a simple text file, just a little Word doc, about doing the non-dominant handwriting. Again, uncensored, just write. And that usually is going to come more from your subconscious communicating to you. And then after doing this, I recommend for doing it for 2 or 3 hours, completely uninterrupted. And for most people, it'll be the longest time they've gone without using their phone other than sleeping. And then you get a fresh sheet of paper in your notebook and ask your subconscious to write you an action plan. And then that's pretty much the gist of it. I give a little bit more detail, but that's really what this whole beach day thing is all about, is just reconnecting with yourself and asking yourself for advice. And my self-hypnosis partner would always say that we have all of the answers inside of us already. It's just, how do we get out of our own way and shut out some of the noise? And it's hard because people obviously are listening to a podcast when they're viewing this. So that, it's like, and guess what? I use a podcast app called Castro. I've probably got 30 podcasts queued up, but sometimes you just want to shut everything off, so get in the flow with the lack of noise and productivity.
Yeah, I remember you used to talk about that a lot too, being the Hour a Day entrepreneur, just the shutting everything out, being very conscientious about shutting down all the 50 tabs that you have open on your computer, and turning off the phone for a period of time, turning off the electronics, because you used to say like spooling the jet engine or something to that effect.
Yeah.
You know, it takes so much time just to get to the part where you can actually be productive and do the thing. And if you're not completely 100% focused during that time, then it's like if every interruption is at least 15 minutes before you get back into that zone. And this is all, yeah, very much flow state, what I would call mind flow stuff. You know, what you shared a little earlier, I would call maybe spirit flow or social flow, of being able to kind of experience these divine connections, you know, showing up to church and like, oh my gosh, you've got 10 apps or 10, you know, patents, and we might be able to connect with this. And this is like what I would maybe call mind flow stuff, where you're being very conscientious about how you focus and protect your time, and that sacred time of creating, you know, the workflow of doing the thing. And so I think that's really powerful.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it is really interesting that whole jet engine analogy, because I mean, I actually learned that from a friend who was a fighter pilot, and there's a lot of truth to that. It's like, it takes a while to spool up, whether that be relaxing, it takes a while to unspool, if you will. But if you've ever seen a jet engine, if you're coming in and you're too low, you know, they don't spool up instantly. It takes time to rebuild up that energy and that thrust. And the same thing, it's like, if I'm writing an email or, you know, a piece of copy or a job ad or a business plan, whatever I'm writing. And if I get interrupted because my phone's buzzing every 3 seconds with some update, by the way, shut off all the updates on your phone is what I highly recommend, like every freaking one of them. If I get interrupted with Slack update, Discord update, I'm trying to think of all the different things that I've shut off it's like email updates, text messages updates. And you can set like, okay, your spouse or your significant other, you can let them get through. And there's also a setting on your phone, if people call back like 2 or 3 times, it'll also cut through. So don't feel like the world's going to fall apart if you do that.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not have your phone for 3 hours. You know, you're allowed to do that. There's nothing that says you have to be on call. And, you know, really just, you know, being able to get some distance from all of that, I think is a really important thing that we don't do nearly enough. And I like how you said that too, Winston, like, you know, your spirit flow or your fitness flow, it's like, there's these different types of flow. And at the end of the day, it's when is life and when are things easy and good? And I always say, you can tell if you're doing the right thing when you're energized by it versus drained by it. So somebody will say, oh, I really like editing video. Okay, great. When you're editing video and you're done doing that, how do you feel? Do you feel better? Do you feel energized? Or do you feel like you were just put through the ringer? Writing copy. If I tell you, go write a sales letter for this new product we're going to sell, you know, does that mean, oh my God, I can't believe that. It's so much work. It's so hard. I start with a blank sheet of paper. It's like, oh yeah, I'm excited. So look at your energy with everything you do. It's really a good exercise to just look at. So for me, it's like talking to you, this is energizing. You know, some people would be like, you know, speaking on stage or doing a podcast or an interview, and it's obvious this is energizing for you too. So we're both doing things that bring us energy, which means we should do more of that. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing my taxes, my energy, and you're probably the same as I think most people other than CPAs, yes. Your energy goes down. But I have a friend who's a CPA, and it's like they like, let me get into the books and just dive in. They get powered up and get energized. I mean, to me, I literally would rather go to the dentist, you know. So find those things that give you energy and do more of those, and try to get rid of, outsource, delegate, delete anything that doesn't give you energy and make you feel better.
Boom. Yeah, that's fabulous. Flowing goodness, Henry. I appreciate that.
Flowing goodness. I like that. Dude. That's good.
Flowtastic. Awesome.
You got to get some shirts to say that. I want to see the Flowtastic shirt.
Flowtastic shirts. Okay, I'll work on that.
I like that. That's good.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I know you are a busy guy. I know you have, you know, other things to do, other things coming up. So I want to be respectful of your time. And if there was any, you know, last maybe flow stories or thoughts that you would, you know, want to leave us with, you know, what would you say?
Well, I would say, read more and unplug more. And when I say read, and again, I love my Kindle and I love my iPad book app because I can highlight and then put it in the readwise and all that. But there's still a place for, unplugging and reading old fashioned, books, like physical freaking books. By the way, their battery life is really solid. They actually never go out ever.
Nice.
And if you write notes, you never, ever lose them. So it would just be to get unplugged more. I mean, if you haven't read my book, The Hour a Day Entrepreneur, it's on Amazon. I would recommend that. I kind of talk about some of this stuff. But there's so many good books. And a wise and extremely successful person once told me the only difference between you today and you a year from now are the people you associate with and the books that you read. So, which, translated, it's like, who are you hanging out with and what are you putting into your brain? And so if you're listening to this, obviously you're putting good stuff into your brain, which is extremely smart. So keep doing more of that and try to unplug and do some reading to get into the flow too, which is really good.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I can definitely personally recommend the Hour a Day Entrepreneur book. It is a good one. It's super mind flow goodness, cash flow goodness, workflow goodness, all those rolled into one. And and Henry's an amazing guy that's done it. You've really done it. You've been there. You've taught many other people to do it. So it's all condensed right into a book. And the battery life, like you said, it lasts a good long while. So
that it does.
I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time. And again, I want to respect your time, let you get back to your family and your other clients and everybody. So thank you for making the time for us today and sharing your wisdom with us and all the goodness. So I'm going to let you get back to it. And to all our friends out there, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. If you know other entrepreneurs, people who are looking to grow their business and get into more flow states and have more time in their day, do more in less time, really, be efficient with your time. Definitely check out the Hour a Day Entrepreneur book and Henry Evans. So thank you so much, Henry, again for being here.
Thanks, Winston.
My pleasure. Thank you. And until next time, my friends, be flowing.